The dying suns of the galaxy bled their last light across the void, each a flicker swallowed by the cold embrace of eternal night. Once, these stars had blazed as beacons of hope and power, guiding fleets of 1,000 worlds toward unity and conquest. Now, their fires waned, like fading memories of a dream slipping beyond reach. Ruins of empires lay scattered among the stars, monuments to ambition and pride that had crumbled into dust. But this is not a story of the dead alone. It is a tale of those who once soared higher than gods, who wielded immortal might and carried the weight of galaxies in their hands. It is a story of a prince who sought perfection beyond mortal bounds, and the slow unraveling of a dream forged in fire and blood. Before we begin the story, know this. We truly care for you, the listener, wherever you are in the endless cosmos, and whatever hour your world keeps. Tell us, where in the universe are you watching from, and what time marks your sky? Now, grasp your cup of warmth, and let us journey together into the shadow of a dying age. Fulgrim stood on the observation deck of his flagship, the Emperor's Grace, gazing through the thick crystal viewport into the swirling chaos of the warp. His face was the image of calm, flawless and pale, crowned by eyes that had seen millennia of war and wonder. Yet beneath that serene exterior churned a storm of doubt and unspoken questions. The distant stars before him were no longer fixed points of guidance. They were warnings, omens etched in light and shadow. He had once believed in the Emperor's vision, a galaxy united beneath the hand of one, where humanity would rise above its fragile origins to claim its rightful throne among the stars. The Great Crusade had been a blazing path of glory, and Fulgrim, the phoenix of the Emperor's children, had danced through it like a flame refined in the forge of war. His legion was unmatched in grace and fury, his name sung in awe and reverence. Yet now, standing alone in the silence of the void, that brilliance felt hollow. The pursuit of perfection, his sacred oath, had become a cage. How could one capture beauty in the endless carnage of war? How could an immortal heart find peace amid ceaseless conflict? And beneath it all, a whisper, soft and seductive, called to him from the depths of the warp, promising a path beyond the limits imposed by flesh and time. Fulgrim turned away from the viewport, the echoes of that whisper lingering like smoke in his mind. He knew the price of ambition. He had seen brothers broken, ideals shattered, and the fragile threads of loyalty stretched to their breaking point. Yet still, the fire inside him yearned to burn brighter, to carve a legacy that would not fade with the dying stars. His hand brushed over the ancient relic cradled in a glass case, the layer blade, a gift from a forgotten age, its surface etched with runes that shimmered in the dim light. It was more than a weapon. It was a symbol of a transcendence, a promise that perfection could be attained, no matter the cost. But at what price? That question haunted him in the silence. Behind him, the hum of the ship's engines pulsed like a heartbeat, a reminder that even empires were fragile things, held together by the will of a few. Somewhere in the endless darkness, other stars awaited their fate. Some would burn brighter, others extinguished forever. Fulgrim's journey was but a single thread woven into the vast tapestry of the cosmos, yet its unraveling could reshape the fate of all. The burden of immortality was a cruel one. To live beyond the bounds of time was to watch all you loved fade and die. To seek perfection was to risk losing yourself to something darker, something beyond understanding. Fulgrim clenched his jaw, feeling the weight of choice settle heavy upon his shoulders. Tomorrow, he would meet with his brothers, Ferris Manus and Horus. and the delicate balance of loyalty and ambition would be tested as never before. For now, the galaxy sighed, a fading star's last breath in the eternal night, and Fulgrim, the Emperor's favoured son, stood on the precipice, the final light before the shadow. The corridors of the Emperor's grace were alive with quiet purpose, a stark contrast to the turbulence roiling within Fulgrim's mind. Servitors and Astartes moved with practiced precision, their faces masks of devotion and discipline. Yet beneath this veneer of order lay the subtle fractures of doubt and ambition, invisible to all but the keenest eyes. Fulgrim's thoughts drifted to his brothers, the towering Ferrus Manus, steadfast and unyielding as the adamantium forge of his soul, and Horus, the favoured war master, whose charm masked a tempest of ambition. These were not merely allies in war. They were mirrors reflecting parts of himself he dared not fully confront. In the grand tapestry of the Great Crusade, their threads intertwined in patterns both beautiful and tragic. It was in the depths of his private chamber, surrounded by trophies of conquest and relics of forgotten worlds, that Fulgrim allowed himself a moment of vulnerability. He summoned his trusted captain, Sota, a warrior as loyal as he was perceptive. The young captain's eyes flickered with concern as Fulgrim revealed the true nature of the relic he had found, an ancient artifact of Xenos origin, its power veiled in shadow. Such things are dangerous, Sota warned, his voice low. They whisper lies to the soul, promising strength, but delivering ruin. Fulgrim nodded, the weight of those words settling on him like a shroud. Yet the allure of the relic was undeniable. It seemed to pulse with a life of its own, a heartbeat attuned to the darkest desires of its bearer. In its depths, Fulgrim glimpsed visions of glory beyond mortal comprehension, a path to the perfection he so desperately sought. But that path was winding and treacherous. As the days passed, the whispers grew louder, weaving themselves into the fabric of his thoughts. He found himself questioning the very foundations of the Emperor's vision. Was unity truly worth the sacrifice of individuality and beauty? Was the pursuit of order a prison for the soul? These doubts were his alone to bear. To his legion, Fulgrim remained the embodiment of perfection, a beacon of hope and relentless strength. Yet beneath the mask, he struggled with the growing schism in his heart. One evening, beneath the cold light of distant stars, Fulgrim stood beside the relic once more. His reflection shimmered in its polished surface, fractured and multiplied. "What do you ask of me?" he whispered, though he already knew the answer. The relic's silence was deafening, yet its promise was clear. Transcendence at any cost. The loyalty that bound him to his brothers began to strain. In dreams, Ferrus's stern face would appear, condemning the path he seemed destined to take. And Horus's words echoed in his ears, cloaked in shadows and honeyed persuasion. Fulgrim's journey was no longer one of conquest alone. It was a battle within, a war for his very soul. The galaxy beyond the ship's hull held its breath. Empires would rise and fall, stars would die. And in the midst of this cosmic tempest, a prince wrestled with a choice that would echo across the ages. The Emperor's children marched through the stars like a symphony of war, each campaign a crescendo of violence and artistry woven into one. Under Fulgrim's command, battles became performances, precision and brutality sculpted with an artist's hand. Victory was no longer enough. It had to be perfect, beautiful, unforgettable. Fulgrim watched his legion with pride and a growing unease. His warriors adorned themselves with symbols of grace, ornate armor, gilded helms, and banners that fluttered like the wings of mythical birds. But beneath the shining veneer, a subtle transformation took root. Efficiency yielded to extravagance, discipline to decadence. The war was still won, but at a cost few dared to measure. Among his closest confidants was Captain Theron, a warrior whose sharp gaze caught the flicker of doubt in Fulgrim's eyes. "My lord," Theron spoke softly one evening, "the quest for beauty is noble, but the enemy is not a canvas to be painted upon. We risk losing the war to chase shadows." Fulgrim's smile was calm, but his heart wavered. "Art is war's truest form," he replied, voice like a polished blade. "The enemy must feel the weight of perfection. It is not weakness to seek it, it is strength." Yet the price was visible to those who looked closer. Skirmishes dragged longer, supplies dwindled under the weight of ornate war machines. Some captains whispered of unease among the ranks, murmurs of discontent beneath the gilded surface. The relentless pursuit of aesthetic triumph risked overshadowing the brutal necessity of survival. Within Fulgrim, the internal struggle deepened. The relic, the layer blade, rested sealed in its case, but its call was constant, a siren song beneath his thoughts. He convinced himself it was a tool, a key to elevate his legion beyond mere mortals. But late at night, in moments of solitude, the whispering promises gnawed at his resolve. The battlefields bore witness to this transformation. Campaigns that should have been swift turned into drawn-out displays of grandeur. Fulgrim's forces hesitated, pausing to perfect formations or adjust banners mid-fight. His captains exchanged uneasy glances, torn between loyalty and practicality. One such captain, Malchus, dared to approach Fulgrim in the glow of a fading sun. "My lord, we risk more than beauty. Our enemies grow bolder while we chase perfection's shadow. Will this path bring glory or ruin?" Fulgrim's gaze hardened, a flicker of the old fire burning bright. "Glory is born of sacrifice, Malchus. If we must sacrifice swiftness for brilliance, so be it." But beneath his words lay a secret torment, the relentless pressure to reconcile two worlds, the unyielding demand for flawless victory, and the intoxicating allure of transcendence whispered by the relic. Each day, the line blurred more, and Fulgrim feared which path he might lose himself upon. That night, alone in his chamber, he touched the relic's cold surface. A pulse of energy coursed through his veins, vivid and disorienting. In that instant, the stars outside seemed to flicker and warp, and a vision unfolded, a galaxy bathed in radiant light, its armies marching in flawless unison, its enemies shattered like glass. The vision was intoxicating, and in its depths lay a promise. The price of perfection was within reach. Yet the shadow at the edge of the vision twisted into a mocking smile, a reminder that no gift came without cost. Fulgrim withdrew his hand, breath shallow, heart pounding with the weight of the choice before him. To grasp the promise of perfection was to risk losing the essence of his humanity and the loyalty of those he loved most. As the stars faded into the cold night beyond the ship's hull, the Phoenix felt the first true crack in his armor. The pursuit of beauty, once a noble cause, had become a dangerous obsession, a flame that threatened to consume all in its path. And in the silent vastness, the galaxy waited, unaware that the fall of an empire was already set in motion. The forge world of Medringard burned beneath a twilight sky, its forges casting molten rivers of light that bled into the gathering dusk. It was here that Fulgrim sought the counsel of Ferrus Manus, his brother bound by iron and unyielding will. The air was thick with the scent of scorched metal and the relentless clang of hammer on anvil, a symphony of creation and destruction. Fulgrim stepped into the grand hall where Ferris awaited, his frame as solid and imposing as the legendary machines he commanded. The warmth of the forge could not soften the sharpness in Ferris's gaze, a gaze that pierced through pretenses and polished words. "Brother," Ferris began, voice steady as a mountain, "I hear whispers that your path strays from the Emperor's light. Beauty is no shield against the harshness of war." Fulgrim's lips curled into a faint smile, the mask of the phoenix settling into place. "Ferris, your strength is your truth, as mine is mine. We each carry a different flame, but both burn for the Emperor." The two stood like titans on opposite sides of a chasm, their convictions the pillars that held the vast weight of the Imperium. Fulgrim spoke of the pursuit of perfection, the need to elevate war beyond mere survival into an art form. Ferris countered with the belief that purpose was found in unyielding strength and sacrifice, that beauty was a luxury the battlefield could ill afford. Their words were not mere debate, but the clashing of elemental forces, fire against iron, passion against resolve. Yet beneath their rivalry lay the blood of brothers, a shared history of battles fought side by side and victories carved from impossible odds. "Your vision risks the Legion's soul," Ferris warned. "For what is beauty if it costs us our purpose? We fight to endure, not to dazzle." Fulgrim's eyes darkened, the flicker of doubt casting shadows across his resolve. "And yet, if we do not seek more than mere survival, what then? To live without striving is to die within." For a moment, silence fell between them, heavy and charged. The fires of the forge seemed to pulse with their unspoken tension, illuminating the fissures growing between two sons of the Emperor. As the conversation wore on, the distant echoes of the warp seemed to stir beyond the walls, unseen but ever present. Fulgrim felt the relic's whisper at the edge of his mind, a subtle tug toward a destiny neither brother fully understood. Ferris's words lingered, both a challenge and a lament. "Beware the voices that promise salvation but bring only ruin." The day ended with no resolution, only the unsteady truce of shared blood and diverging paths. Fulgrim departed Medrengard with the weight of brotherhood heavy upon him, his heart a battlefield of loyalty and ambition. In the quiet moments aboard the Emperor's Grace, he pondered the forge's lesson. Strength and beauty, could they coexist, or was one destined to consume the other? The galaxy beyond pulsed with secrets and shadow. The war was far from over, and the choices made in these twilight hours would echo across the stars for millennia to come. The march of the Emperor's children through the stars was no longer marked solely by conquest. It was a path paved with subtle transgressions, where the boundaries between duty and desire blurred, like the shifting hues of a dying star. As Fulgrim's vision of perfection deepened, the Legion's actions grew increasingly unorthodox, their victories tinged with the reckless elegance of those who sought not just to win, but to redefine war itself. Captain Salter, ever watchful, had begun to record the whispers of disquiet that stirred within the ranks, reports of excess, of battles prolonged for spectacle, of needless cruelty masked as artistry. These were the shadows creeping beneath the shining armor of the Legion. Sotha feared that the pursuit of beauty was becoming a dangerous folly, a gamble with the soul of the Emperor's children. Fulgrim, however, remained resolute. To him, the sacrifices were necessary. The universe was vast and uncaring, and only through transcendence could humanity claim its rightful place. The relic, the Lair blade, lay sealed, yet its influence was undeniable. Its whispers wove through Fulgrim's thoughts, promising mastery beyond mortal limits, a perfection not bound by flesh or war. But the cost was not measured in gold or lives alone. It was etched into the very spirit of the Legion. Brothers once united by unbreakable bonds began to question their place in the grand design. Loyalty faltered beneath the weight of ambition and the allure of forbidden power. One evening, under the cold gaze of distant stars, Fulgrim convened with his captains in the War Council chamber. The room was thick with tension, the air heavy as the warriors debated the future course of their campaigns. Captain Malchus's voice broke the silence, sharp and wary. "My lord, our victories come at a price. The men grow restless. The quest for perfection consumes them. We risk losing more than battles. We risk losing ourselves." Fulgrim's reply was measured, yet carried the steel of conviction. "The path to greatness is never without sacrifice. We are the Emperor's chosen, the architects of a new dawn. If that dawn demands pain, so be it." Yet even as he spoke, a flicker of doubt shadowed his eyes. The delicate balance between glory and ruin teetered precariously, and Fulgrim knew that the line he walked grew ever thinner. That night, alone in his chamber, Fulgrim reached once more for the relic's cold embrace. The moment his fingers brushed its surface, a surge of power coursed through him, brilliant and intoxicating. The stars outside twisted and shimmered, and visions unfolded before him. A galaxy resplendent in light, its armies flawless and eternal. But at the vision's edge lurked a darkness, an unseen price, a whisper of chains forged in shadow. Withdrawing his hand, Fulgrim's breath came heavy. The relic's promise was a double-edged blade, and he was yet to learn which wound would be the deepest. The galaxy beyond remained indifferent, a vast stage where empires would rise and fall like tides. And amid this cosmic dance, Fulgrim's journey spiraled closer to the precipice, where loyalty, ambition, and destiny would collide in a storm from which none would emerge unchanged. The storm had been building for years, though few could see it clearly. The Emperor's children still won their wars, still marched under the banner of the Great Crusade, but the victories no longer rang with the same purity. There was an edge to them now, a strange decadence threaded into the discipline. On the shattered world of Carpathis, the pattern revealed itself in full. The planet's defenders had been broken within days, yet the Emperor's children did not deliver the swift, clean justice that imperial doctrine demanded. Instead, the campaign stretched on for weeks. Each battle waged not for necessity, but for display. Maneuvers choreographed like theatre, executions turned into ritual pageantry. Captain Sotha watched it all with a silent unease. He had once believed that perfection was the Emperor's gift, the highest honor a warrior could strive for. But here, among the rubble of Carpathis's cities, perfection had become something else, a hunger that fed upon itself, a fire that cared nothing for the cost. Fulgrim seemed blind to the change. If anything, he embraced it. Standing atop the citadel of Carpathis's last stronghold, he gazed across the burning horizon as if beholding a masterpiece. To him, each plume of smoke was a brushstroke, each death a note in a grand symphony. That night, Fulgrim summoned his captains to a feast. The great hall had been stripped from the enemy's palace, draped in silks and lit with braziers. Exotic food from the conquered cities lay in gilded trays, and trophies from the battlefield adorned the walls. The captains came in full armor, their ceramite polished to a mirror sheen. But beneath the gleam, Sotha could see the tension. They ate and drank, but their eyes shifted warily toward Fulgrim, toward one another. The unity that had once defined them had become fragile, like glass under strain. When the cups were full, Fulgrim stood and raised his voice. "Brothers, we have seen the galaxy's ugliness, its chaos, its ruin, and we have made it beautiful. This is our purpose, to perfect the imperfect, to shape the raw clay of creation into a form worthy of the Emperor's dream." A murmur of agreement rippled through the hall, though it was half-hearted in some corners. Captain Malchus's gaze met Sotha's, and there was no mistaking the silent warning in it. After the feast, Sotha lingered behind, approaching Fulgrim privately. "My lord," he said carefully, "the men follow you without question. But they begin to wonder, where does this path end? Perfection is endless. At what point do we say it is enough?" Fulgrim's smile was serene, almost pitying. "Enough, Sotha. There is no enough. To stop striving is to die. We were not made to settle for mediocrity." "But at what cost?" Fulgrim's eyes hardened, and for a moment the mask slipped. "If the Emperor himself asked for this cost, would you hesitate to pay it?" Sotha did not answer. That night, as Fulgrim returned to his private chamber, the relic awaited him. He had not touched it since Carpathis fell, but now the pull was irresistible. His hand closed around its hilt, and the whispers came, instantly, smoother and sweeter than ever before. They spoke of destiny, of a beauty beyond mortal comprehension, of a future where he stood as more than a primarch, something greater, eternal. And somewhere in that whisper, hidden beneath the flattery, was the faintest echo of a laugh. The cold shadows of the Emperor's grace seemed to deepen as Horus stepped aboard, his presence a tempest cloaked in charm and ambition. The War Master's eyes gleamed with a fire that rivaled the dying stars outside, magnetic, dangerous, filled with promises that unsettled even the most steadfast. Fulgrim greeted his brother with the grace befitting their shared blood, but beneath the surface, a storm raged. Horus was no longer the loyal commander of the great crusade he had once been. He was a man walking a knife's edge between salvation and ruin, and his words bore the seductive weight of inevitability. "Fulgrim," Horus began, voice smooth as obsidian, "we are bound by more than blood or duty. We are bound by the future, a future the Emperor fears to face." Fulgrim's gaze sharpened. "Speak plainly, Horus. What is this future you claim?" Horus's smile was a knife concealed in silk. "The Emperor's vision demands obedience, but it denies us freedom. Freedom to shape the galaxy as we see fit, to cast off the shackles of a fading dream and claim our rightful place as gods among men." Fulgrim felt the pull of those words, like gravity itself bending around a black hole. They spoke to the part of him that thirsted for transcendence, for a perfection not shackled by mortal chains. Yet loyalty and love for the Emperor still burned in his chest like a dying sun. "Your words are dangerous," Fulgrim warned, stepping closer. "They threaten the very foundation upon which we stand." "Foundations crumble," Horus replied, eyes gleaming with conviction. "Only those willing to reshape the world can build anew. The Emperor's light blinds us to what must be done." Their conversation stretched into the cold hours, a battle not of weapons, but of ideals and wills. Horus appealed to Fulgrim's pride and ambition, cloaking rebellion in the language of liberation. He spoke of bonds forged in fire and blood, but also of chains waiting to be broken. Fulgrim wrestled with the storm within. The relic's whisper was a distant echo compared to Horus's voice, yet both pulled him toward the abyss. To stand with Horus was to betray the Emperor. To refuse was to deny the promise of a new dawn. As dawn's first light bled through the viewport, Fulgrim felt the weight of choice settle heavy upon him. The loyalty that had defined him wavered, caught between duty and desire, love and ambition. The galaxy beyond awaited, vast and indifferent, unaware that the seeds of its undoing were sown in whispered words and fractured hearts. The Emperor's grace thrummed with unnatural energy, a silent pulse that vibrated through the ship's hull and resonated in Fulgrim's bones. The Leia blade, once a dormant relic, now stirred with a sentient hunger that neither steel nor servitor could quell. In the dimly lit chamber where the blade was kept, Fulgrim reached out with a tentative hand, the weight of centuries pressing upon him. The moment his fingers brushed the cold metal, a surge of power shattered the stillness, a flood of light and shadow that danced behind his eyes. It was as if the blade were alive, a conduit to a realm beyond the mortal coil, whispering secrets older than stars. Visions cascaded through Fulgrim's mind, vast armies moving in perfect harmony, worlds sculpted by will alone, and a throne of light awaiting him in the far reaches of the warp. Yet beneath the splendor lurked a dark undertow, a presence coiled in the depths, patient and cruel. The blade's demon, ancient and cunning, reached into Fulgrim's soul, probing the fragile cracks beneath his veneer of perfection. He wielded the blade for the first time in battle shortly after, on the war-ravaged plains of Varys Prime. The clash of ceramite and the roar of weapons faded as the blade sang in his hands, a symphony of death and beauty intertwined. Each stroke was flawless, a dance of destruction that left enemies shattered like glass and allies awed in silence. The warriors of the Emperor's children watched their Primarch transform into something beyond legend, a being whose very presence altered the fabric of reality. Yet in the aftermath, a subtle unease took root. The blade's influence was not without cost. Fulgrim found his thoughts invaded by restless dreams, echoes of a laughter not his own. Shadows crept into the corners of his vision, and the line between his will and the demons began to blur. One night, beneath a sky fractured by distant nova explosions, Fulgrim awoke from a nightmare. He stood alone in a vast hall, the walls adorned with the faces of his brothers, their eyes hollow and accusing. At the center, Ferrus Manus knelt, bound in chains forged from his own shattered will. The vision was broken by the cold whisper of the blade at his side, its promise clear and terrible. To achieve perfection, sacrifices must be made. Brothers, loyalty, and even the self. Fulgrim's heart clenched with a sorrow he dared not voice. The price of the path before him was rising, and there was no turning back. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath as the tides of war shifted with relentless fury. News from the front lines spoke of a growing schism within the Emperor's children. A legion once united by pride and purpose, now fractured by the invisible claws of ambition and corruption. Fulgrim's grip on his legion tightened, yet the threads of loyalty frayed beyond his control. Captains whispered in shadowed corridors, their words laced with fear and defiance. The Leia blade, a beacon of his ascendance, had become a symbol of his transformation, a mark that set him apart, a harbinger of change both wondrous and terrifying. In the Great War Council, voices rose in heated debate. Captain Malchus challenged Fulgrim openly for the first time, his tone sharp with desperation. "My lord, the Legion falters. Our victories grow hollow. We risk losing not only battles but the very souls of our warriors." Fulgrim's eyes burned with a cold fire. "The cost of greatness is never small, Malchus. We strive for perfection beyond the grasp of mortals. This path is ours alone to walk." But the cracks widened. Reports came of unexplained madness among the ranks, warriors consumed by visions, driven to acts of violence and desecration. Some spoke of nightmares that bore the mark of the warp. Others whispered of a darkness growing within their Primarch. Fulgrim felt the weight of these rumors like chains, but he refused to confront them openly. The Lyre Blade's voice was louder than ever, its seductive promises drowning out the calls for caution. One night, as the ship drifted through the silence of uncharted space, Fulgrim stood alone before the relic's resting place. His reflection fractured in its polished surface, a man caught between light and shadow. In the depths of his mind, a battle raged, a war not of armies, but of will and identity. The demon bound to the blade sought dominion over his soul, twisting his desires into something unrecognizable. Yet amid the torment, a faint spark of the man he once was fought back, clinging to memories of brotherhood and honor. But the question lingered, cold and merciless. How long could that spark survive the coming storm? The halls of the Emperor's Grace echoed with a silence more profound than any battle's roar. Shadows clung to every corner, as if the ship itself mourned the unraveling of its master's soul. The once proud legion stood on the precipice of ruin, its fate intertwined with the fragile thread of Fulgrim's wavering will. Whispers of rebellion had become a chorus, and the unity that had once defined the Emperor's children splintered beneath the weight of ambition and despair. Captains who had sworn fealty now cast furtive glances, their loyalty a fragile veneer masking fear and doubt. In the heart of the ship, Fulgrim confronted the darkness within, an unrelenting tempest stirred by the Lyre Blade's insidious influence. Its demon was no mere whisper. It was a ravenous force, seeking to consume all light and replace it with shadow. Yet Fulgrim resisted, even as the boundaries between self and possession blurred. His mind became a battlefield, torn between the love of his brothers and the promise of transcendence whispered by the blade. It was then that Ferrus Manus appeared in the chamber, his presence a beacon of iron resolve amidst the storm. Fulgrim. Ferrus's voice was both a command and a plea. This path leads only to oblivion. Cast aside this darkness before it consumes you, and us all. Fulgrim's eyes met his brother's, shining with a tragic mixture of regret and defiance. I seek only perfection, brother, something beyond the petty struggles of mortality. Perfection, Ferrus spat, at the cost of our souls. Their confrontation was not just of words, but of fate itself. Around them, the walls seemed to pulse with the dying light of 1,000 stars, the universe holding its breath as brothers faced the abyss. In that moment, the fragile alliance shattered. Fulgrim's choice was made, not with triumph, but with the heavy sorrow of inevitability. The Lyre Blade blazed with unholy fire, and Fulgrim stepped beyond the threshold of the man he once was, embracing the dark gift that would mark the beginning of the Emperor's children's tragic fall. The galaxy watched in silence as the light of a once great prince flickered and died, consumed by shadows born of ambition and despair. The galaxy seemed to tremble beneath the weight of what had come to pass. News of Fulgrim's fall spread like wildfire through the Imperium stars, a bitter storm that shattered faith and sowed seeds of despair. The Emperor's children, once the shining pinnacle of honor and artistry, were now a legion fractured by shadow and corruption. Amid the ruins of their former glory, whispers of rebellion took root in the hearts of the brothers. The Lyre Blade, now a symbol of their Primarch's descent, burned with a dark promise that few dared to challenge. Some captains clung to the fading memory of their leader's nobler self, while others succumbed to the seductive power that flowed through their veins like poison. Fulgrim's once radiant visage was now a mask of torment and resolve, a prince caught between salvation and damnation. His mind was a battleground where love and ambition collided in violent tides, the demon's voice a relentless shadow clawing at his soul. In secret chambers beneath the ship, factions formed. Loyalties divided between those who sought to reclaim the honor of the Emperor's children and those who embraced the dark path forged by their fallen Primarch. Captain Malchus emerged as a reluctant leader of the Loyalists, his voice steady but burdened. We must remember who we are. We were forged to serve the Emperor, not to bow before shadows. But even as he rallied the faithful, the corrupted forces gathered strength. Fulgrim's influence spread like a virus, twisting minds and hearts until the line between friend and foe blurred beyond recognition. The War Council became a battlefield of its own, where whispers of betrayal flew beneath the guise of loyalty. Each decision carried the weight of fate, and every choice was a step deeper into the abyss. Fulgrim stood apart, haunted by visions of his brothers, Ferrus, Horus, and others, each face a mirror of what he had lost and what he might yet destroy. The galaxy's vastness offered no comfort, only the cold certainty that the fall of a prince would echo through eternity. As the Emperor's grace sailed into the void, its legacy fractured and bleeding, Fulgrim's journey reached a crossroads. Redemption seemed a distant hope, and the cost of his choices cast a long shadow over all who followed. The tides of war surged relentlessly across the war-torn sectors, each battle a grim testament to the fractured soul of the Emperor's children. As the once unified legions splintered beneath the weight of betrayal and ambition, the galaxy became a stage for their tragic descent, an epic where loyalty clashed with corruption, and the lines between hero and villain blurred beyond recognition. Fulgrim's presence on the battlefield had become both legend and curse. Warriors whispered his name in awe and dread, the once revered Primarch, now a figure shrouded in shadow and conflicting myth. The layer blade sang in his hands, a siren's call that transformed every strike into an elegy of death and beauty. Yet, amidst the carnage and chaos, cracks in the Legion's dark armor began to show. Captain Malchus, a steadfast beacon of honor, rallied those who still clung to the Emperor's light. His voice carried through the chaos like a clarion call. We are the Emperor's children, forged for glory and purity. We must reclaim our souls before they are lost forever. But even as Malchus stirred hope, the demon's whispers grew louder within Fulgrim's mind, a relentless tide that threatened to drown all reason. The relic's power promised ascendance, a transcendence that beckoned with promises of endless strength and eternal life. To resist was to invite oblivion. The War Council became a crucible of tension and shifting allegiances. Heated debates erupted over strategy and ideology, each decision a battleground where the fates of thousands hung in the balance. Betrayals were no longer whispers but open wounds, seeping poison into the Legion's fractured heart. In the quiet moments between battles, Fulgrim wrestled with his own fractured reflection, a man torn between the ghost of his former glory and the consuming darkness that threatened to claim him entirely. His dreams were haunted by visions of his brothers, Ferrus, Horus, and others, faces that reflected not only his past but the grim potential of the future. The galaxy beyond remained vast and indifferent, stars burning cold as ancient sentinels. Yet within the confines of the Emperor's grace, a storm raged, a war of wills and souls that would determine the fate of a legion and echo through the annals of history. Fulgrim's path was now irrevocably set, a tragic dance on the edge of oblivion, where redemption and ruin lay intertwined, waiting for the final act. The shadows of betrayal stretched long across the battle-scarred fields of Corthy's Prime. The Emperor's children, once united in purpose and pride, now faced a reckoning that threatened to sunder their very souls. The War Council chamber, once a place of strategy and camaraderie, had become an arena of suspicion and whispered treachery. Fulgrim stood at the centre, the lair blade clenched tightly in his hand, its unholy light casting eerie reflections on the faces of those gathered. The air was thick with tension as captains and lieutenants exchanged wary glances, their loyalties fractured and uncertain. Captain Malchus, the voice of defiance and hope, stepped forward, his eyes burning with unwavering conviction. "My Primarch, we stand on the brink, not just of defeat, but of damnation. The path you walk leads us away from the Emperor's grace and into shadows from which there may be no return." Fulgrim's gaze met Malchus's, a tempest of pride and sorrow swirling within. "I seek not damnation, but perfection," he replied, voice steady yet haunted. "If the cost is steep, so be it. Our destiny demands sacrifice." From the darkness, a figure emerged. Captain Theron, once a loyal friend, now a shadowed enigma, whose allegiance wavered like a flickering flame. "Sacrifice, yes," Theron said quietly, "but what of loyalty? What of honor? These are the chains that bind us, yet you would break them for a promise whispered by a blade tainted with darkness." Fulgrim's grip tightened, the blade's pulse sinking with the turmoil within. The demon's voice surged in his mind, a seductive tide drowning out reason and regret. Yet beneath the shadow, a flicker of the man he once was fought to rise. The council erupted into chaos, accusations and defenses clashing like weapons in the fray. Bonds shattered, friendships severed in moments that echoed through the Legion's fractured heart. Amid the storm, Ferrus Manus appeared, a living symbol of iron resolve and the Emperor's will. His presence commanded silence, his voice cutting through the discord like a hammer striking steel. "Enough. This path destroys us all. Fulgrim, cast aside this darkness before it consumes everything we are." Fulgrim's eyes, once radiant with ambition, now glistened with tears born of loss and inevitability. "I cannot," he whispered, the weight of his choice breaking him. "To surrender now is to deny the very essence of who I am." As the council dissolved into turmoil, the tragic truth stood clear. The fall of the Emperor's children was no longer a possibility. It was a certainty. The line between salvation and destruction blurred into oblivion, and the empire they had built teetered on the edge of collapse. The stars outside continued their cold vigil, indifferent to the fate of those who dared to dream beyond their reach. The skies above Corthy's Prime roared with fire and fury, a tempest mirroring the chaos within the hearts of the Emperor's children. The once proud Legion, fractured by betrayal and ambition, now stood on the precipice of annihilation, its fate intertwined with the choices of a fallen Primarch. Fulgrim moved through the war-torn city like a spectre, his armor gleaming with the eerie light of the lair blade at his side. The relic's whispers were louder than ever, a relentless song that promised glory and damnation in equal measure. His steps echoed on shattered stone as he approached the central plaza where the final confrontation awaited. Captain Malchus and his loyalists had rallied the remaining faithful, their numbers diminished but spirits unbroken. They stood as a beacon of defiance against the encroaching darkness, a fragile hope amid the ruins. Malchus's voice carried over the din of battle, sharp and resolute. "This is our last stand, for honor, for the Emperor, and for the souls lost to this madness." Fulgrim faced them, the weight of his choices pressing down like a crushing tide. His eyes held the sorrow of 1,000 fallen brothers, the burden of an empire slipping through his grasp. "I sought perfection," he confessed, voice heavy with regret. "But the price was too great. We have all paid it." The air trembled as the layer blade ignited in his hand, its dark light casting twisted shadows on the faces of friend and foe alike. The demon within stirred, its hunger nearly overwhelming the last vestiges of Fulgrim's will. Suddenly, the clash began. The loyalists against the corrupted, brother against brother in a brutal dance of steel and fire. The battlefield became a crucible where loyalty was tested and sacrifice demanded. Amid the chaos, Ferrus Manus arrived, his presence a stark contrast to the ruin around him. With unyielding resolve, he challenged Fulgrim one last time. "Brother, this path ends now. Choose redemption or oblivion." Fulgrim's reply was a whispered prayer, a plea for forgiveness lost to the void. "I am beyond redemption." The final blows were struck beneath storm-split skies, the echoes of their clash resonating across the stars. As the dust settled, the fate of the Emperor's children was sealed. Not in victory, but in tragedy. The empire they had built crumbled, a monument to ambition and loss, destined to haunt the galaxy for millennia. The dying suns of the shattered system cast long, cold shadows across the broken hull of the Emperor's grace. Silence reigned where once the thunder of war had echoed, a solemn testament to the end of an era and the fall of a prince. Fulgrim stood alone on the observation deck, gazing into the void with eyes that held the weight of millennia, an immortal caught in the cruel grip of fate. Around him, the remnants of his legion drifted like ghosts, their glory faded to whispers and ash. The dreams of perfection he had chased with fervor now lay shattered, scattered like the stars themselves, cold and distant. The layer blade, once a symbol of promise and power, rested inert at his side, a relic whose hunger had consumed more than just flesh. Fulgrim's mind wandered through memories both radiant and dark. The laughter of brothers in the light of victory, the bitter tears shed in moments of loss, the burning questions of loyalty and sacrifice that had carved deep wounds within his soul. Immortality, he realized, was a curse as much as a gift. To live beyond time was to bear the endless pain of watching all that was loved and fought for decay into oblivion. He thought of Ferrus Manus, his iron brother, whose steadfast honor had stood as a beacon in the encroaching darkness. He thought of Horus, whose tragic fall had unleashed chaos across the galaxy, a mirror of his own descent into shadow. And he thought of the Emperor, distant and unknowable, whose dream had become both a beacon and a prison. The cost of ambition lay bare before him, the loss of self, the betrayal of kin, and the death of hope. Yet beneath the sorrow, a flicker of something enduring remained, the faint, stubborn ember of a soul seeking redemption beyond the ruin. As the cold stars watched silently, Fulgrim sheathed the layer blade, its dark whispers fading into the void. He stepped forward into the emptiness, a solitary figure adrift in a galaxy that had once been his to shape. The empire he had sought to perfect was no more, and in its place remained only the tragic legacy of a prince who dared to dream beyond the stars and paid the ultimate price.